In gold mining, nothing is cheap. Each of the SLLE boxes cost about $5,000. Therefore, rather than just sitting there rusting, it's nice to see them being used. Imagine spending almost $500,000 on a gold mine just to find out it's a complete flop. For Travis, a single father living on a remote island in Alaska, that was his worst nightmare. His money was gone, his ambition was dying, and his equipment was breaking down. He required a miracle. It was a named miracle. Freddy Juan Burrow, his right-hand man. The island where dreams are lost. The locals refer to Porcupine Island, which is located deep in the wilderness of southeast Alaska. Most maps don't have it. This island, you see, is notorious for its sudden, blinding fogs in a strange magnetic rock that causes compasses to spin wildly. Running this plant for the first time is a lot of fun. For a few years it has been parked in a field. It never occurred to me that it would work out. According to legend, the island itself is reluctant to be located. It is home to old Sitka spruce trees that are so tall that they appear to slash the sky in a heavy quiet. Travis, a single father, chose to take a big chance at this point. Travis wasn't a famous mining magnate. In all honesty, he was just an ordinary man, a parent who wanted to provide for his children. He saved all of his money. He spent years doing 2 jobs. He then used all of his life savings, a whopping $475,000, to purchase this isolated gold claim. He purchased the land along with all of its associated mining equipment. It appeared to be the ideal arrangement. He was informed by the previous owners that it was rich in gold. It was meant to be a legacy for his family and his ticket to a better life. Excellent. Increases my confidence that we will reach our 25-ounce goal. However, Porcupine Island keeps its secrets close to the vest. Here, the ground is a mixture of sticky blue clay and hard slate. The worst nightmare of a child. The weather might change suddenly. Everything turns to sticky mud when it's sunny one minute and freezing rain the next. This land doesn't give up its treasure easy, as Travis discovered the hard way. He was feeding his wash plant scoop after scoop of that gritty dirt, day after day. He was wasting time, money, and fuel. It was a frighteningly easy problem. The gold was vanishing. It was evident in his test pans. The dirt contained beautiful gold, a lot of it. At the end of the day, however, he discovered that his cellar boxes were nearly empty. You will need to visit the larger factory. Yes. But yes, in order for that to occur, we have a lot of work ahead of us. It is very expensive because of the steel, pumps, and motors. We have an approximate estimate of $14,000 for material alone. The treasure was meant to be caught by the machine. Rather, it was allowing the gold to wash out the rear, along with all the mud and useless rock. Perhaps 30% of the gold was being caught by him. Simply put, that is a failing mine. He was getting further and deeper in debt with each operation. His goal was becoming a catastrophe. Travis realized he was at the end of his rope, since his finances were gone, and his aspirations were dwindling. He had a $500,000 problem, and was a single father living alone on a secluded island. He was unable to fix it on his own. He needed the best in the business to aid him. And so he called. He contacted the renowned gold gurus, Juan Burrow and Freddy Dodge. It was a desperate plea, a long shot. He was aware that they were his only chance to prevent the future of his family from being destroyed. Everything now hinged on whether 2 legends could defeat an island that seems intent on destroying any man who dared to set foot on it. There, we are being taught the basics of gold mining by our 2 teachers. As Freddy and Juan landed, the sound of the float boat engines reverberated around the foggy bay. As soon as they stepped onto the floating dock, they felt Porcupine Island's distinct coolness. The frigid air wasn't the only thing. It was the place's oppressive silence. To greet them, Travis was present. His face was marked with stress, which you could see. He was a desperate man living on fumes. To get to his mining operation, he led them up the muddy track. Encircled by those enormous spruce trees, the location was a clearing cut out of the thick forest. The wash plant, the source of the issue, was located in the center of the clearing. It was a trommel-style plant, a large blue machine. In essence, a trommel is a long revolving metal tube that has a screen. The concept is straightforward. In one end, you dump the soil. Inside, water sprays. The dirt is meant to be broken up by the water and the spinning action. Through the screen, the gold and lesser rocks fall to the sala boxes below. Refurbishing half of this sala box is undoubtedly quicker than building a full new one. As you can see, this one is already bent up. Therefore, I'm going to add all fresh angle clips. Indeed, sir. The top is simply welded. This will snap them off after you use a wedge on it 3 or 4 times. Thus, 14 of these are required. The larger, useless rocks exit the tube at the end. Although it's a standard design, Freddy asserts that the details are always crucial. When it comes to gold mining equipment, Freddy Dodge has a sort of sixth sense. He has spent his entire life doing this. He can sense a machine's problems just by looking at it. His eyes narrowed as he approached Travis's plant. He didn't even have to watch it operate. He immediately recognized the issue. The angle was completely incorrect. The entire plant had an excessively steep inclination. Travis thought it would help wash the stuff through more quickly, so he placed it at a steep downhill angle. However, Freddy was aware that was a grave error. He gave Travis a straightforward explanation. The rocks and water are moving far too quickly at such a steep angle. In essence, they are flying through the machine. The heavy gold is never given a chance to settle. It is intended to fall out of the flow and become entangled in the cell box's riffles. Rather, it was simply hydroplaning directly over them, swept away by the water's rush. Catching a baseball launched at 100 miles per hour was like that. Master mechanic and fabricator Juan set to work examining the machine's bones. The amount of gold in that sucker is astounding. Take a look at this. You see that, but only on the cart? And, dude, it's really good stuff. I certainly didn't anticipate seeing so much. Isn't that surprising? Anything can be built or fixed by him. He saw more issues. The trauma's spray bars were in disarray. There were clogged nozzles. Some of them were spraying in the wrong place. The continuous downpour required to dissolve that sticky blue clay was not being produced by them. Rather, they were only making water channels through which large chunks of clay could pass and come into contact. They faced a double calamity, with all the gold still trapped inside them. The water pressure was a disaster, and the angle was excessively steep. Travis was simultaneously losing gold in 2 separate ways. Freddy quickly tested the tailings, or waste material, that came out of the machine's back. Fine gold glowed in his pan. The sight was devastating. Every single day Travis had been wasting a fortune. Freddy turned to face Travis and uttered the words that no child should ever hear. Nothing is happening with your plant. It's merely a large, pricey gold-flinging machine. Despite the dire diagnosis, they now had a strategy. Both the angle and the water needed to be fixed. It seems straightforward enough, but even easy solutions may turn into enormous monsters on a secluded island, with few resources and little time. The race against time. Freddy and Juan wasted little time in making things better, as they had just 7 days to do so. The largest task was the first one, which involved reorienting that enormous wash facility. This was no easy adjustment. It was necessary to lift and move the 20,000-pound equipment in its hole. A crane would be used on a typical site. However, there was no crane on Porcupine Island. Only their own resourcefulness and Travis's excavator were present. Juan's abilities truly came into play here. He gave Travis exact instructions in the excavator. The dance between man and machine was tense and hazardous. The plant's front end had to be raised. After that, they had to excavate the earth beneath it. Lowering the front end to create a significantly shorter slope was the aim. Freddy desired a mere 2 brubs angle. That tilt is so small that it is hardly perceptible. However, in the realm of gold recovery, that minor adjustment has a huge impact. The stream would be sufficiently slowed to allow the heavy gold to fall and be captured. Freddy dealt with the water issue, while Juan and Travis struggled with the enormous equipment. The old spray bars were torn out by him. They couldn't be fixed. This wash facility has never been heard of before. We had no idea how it would actually function, but it's going pretty well. Nothing is stopping us. He intended to create an entirely new system. He had to make what he referred to as a water curtain. He desired a strong wall of spray that would strike each and every particle of dirt that got into the trauma. This would unleash all of the gold flakes and blow apart that sticky blue clay. On a secluded island, however, creating something new is quite difficult. Running to the hardware store is not an option. Every pipe, bolt, and nut must be modified or scrounged from what you have on hand. Juan and Freddy had brought some supplies, but not much. They began searching among the wealth of old, forgotten metal that was Travis's junk pile. They discovered antique fittings and pipelines. The bright blue flame illuminated Juan's face as he ignited his welder. Like a professional puzzle solver, he started cutting and fitting the parts together. The hours stretched into days. The labor was exhausting. There was muck everywhere, and the air in Alaska was chilly. Driven by coffee and a common will, they labored from dawn till dusk. Alongside them, Travis worked. He felt a ray of hope for the first time in months. As he observed the masters transforming his disassembled operation, he was learning from them. He observed how they confidently and calmly tackled every issue. Fixing the equipment wasn't the only thing at stake. It involved changing one's perspective completely. For now, we have only cut out the grates for the jig. The grates he possesses are composed of wood and are completely worn out. Therefore, doing this will eventually aid in his gold recovery. Therefore, we will have them welded down there and installed. The new spray bar system was beginning to take shape by the end of the third day. Built from scrap, it was a piece of art. At the very end of the trauma, Juan had even installed a high-pressure nozzle as a particular feature. It was dubbed the Nugget Catcher by Freddy. It was intended to give any larger rocks one last blast, in case a tiny nugget was concealed therein. The professionals are distinguished from amateurs by their attention to detail. They weren't merely resolving the primary issue. They were considering all the ways they may lose gold and preventing it. The crew was in a good mood because the machine was leveled and the new water system was nearly finished. However, they were in for another unpleasant surprise on Porcupine Island, deep within the machine's internal workings. It was time to fix the last component of the system, the cello boxes. Now that the angle of the trommel had been adjusted, and the new spray bars were prepared for installation, the money is made in the cello box. When it comes to capturing gold, it is the last resort. Freddy's positive attitude disappeared as he looked into the long green troughs. Something horribly wrong caught his eye. A metal screen known as expanded metal was placed over miner's moss, which was used to line the cello boxes. The goal of this arrangement is to produce tiny, turbulent water pockets that will trap the gold. Right now, Juan is up there constructing the new cello box for this region. He got the easier job, I believe. Mike and I were given the difficult task. Travis's setup, however, was a complete failure. The metal that was expanded was not the correct kind. The metal was elevated too high off the moss, and the holes were too big. It was producing a smooth slope rather than mild turbulence. The beautiful gold was only skimming the top. It was installed improperly, which made the situation worse. The front edges were oriented incorrectly. The water was busily pushing the gold out of the box with its assistance. Travis was suffering greatly as a result of yet another typical rookie error. This was a serious shortcoming. Even with the ideal water pressure and angle, they would still lose the majority of the gold if the cello boxes weren't in good condition. They had to improvise once more. New expanded metal was not available to them. They couldn't simply place an order. Weeks would pass before it arrived. They needed to make do with what they had. Freddy made a daring choice. They planned to tear everything out and put it back together, piece by piece. The labor was tiresome and irritating. The huge metal screen was hundreds of square feet that they had to pull up. They cleared the miner's moss of all the muck and packed gravel. After that, they started the laborious task of replacing it. They followed Freddy's instructions this time. In order to align the right edge with the flow, they turned the expanded metal over. They next needed to figure out how to lower it so that the proper riffle was produced. Although it will be heartbreaking to watch that old girl go, the new will replace the old. The master fabricator, Juan, devised a clever solution. He had to construct dozens of tiny metal clips by hand in order to secure the screen firmly against the moss. Hours passed. Each clip needed to be precisely sized and bent. Although it was a painful and drawn-out procedure, they understood it was necessary. The constant Alaskan weather went against them as they worked. A persistent drizzle started to fall as a chilly, sharp wind blew across the clearing. Their hands were numb, the muck thickened, and the tools became slick. Travis marveled as he observed them at work. He had followed the directions he had read online to install the metal himself. He believed he had done it correctly. He could now see how experience made a difference. Juan and Freddy were more than mechanics. They were gold recovery scientists. They had a unique understanding of the behavior of gold and the mechanics of water flow that comes from decades of experimentation. It was finished after yet another long day of arduous work. They rebuilt the cello boxes. They installed the new spray bars. The device was level. The system had been completely re-engineered. They were nearing the end of their 7 days. The time has come for the truth. It was time for a dirt run. The time had come to test whether their week of blood, sweat, and creativity had truly paid off, or whether Travis's $500,000 dream was permanently dashed. They kept his sanity intact. But after he fought for so long, was it appropriate for two specialists to make things seem so simple? For more amazing gold stories, like and subscribe.